Welcome to Dreamy Tales, a place where gentle, relaxing stories will guide you into a deep sleep. On this channel, we'll be sharing soothing stories to help you unwind and forget the worries of the day. If you enjoy these peaceful moments, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and tap the notification bell so you won't miss any of our bedtime tales. Let's create a space of relaxation together each night. Now, before we dive into tonight's story, let's take a few moments to relax your body and mind. Find a comfortable spot to sit or lie down. Gently close your eyes and take a deep breath. Inhale slowly, feeling the fresh air filling your lungs, and slowly exhale, letting the tension in your body gradually melt away. Repeat this 3 more times. With each breath, feel yourself becoming more relaxed and ready to enter the magical world of stories. Now, loosen your shoulders, gently massage your face, and release any remaining tension. Pay attention to any areas in your body that still feel tight, maybe in your neck, back, or legs, and gently let them relax. Next, we'll do a short guided visualization. Imagine yourself in a beautiful garden under the night sky, with the soft moonlight shining down. You can hear the rustling of leaves in the breeze, the sound of water flowing gently in the distance. Feel the cool breeze brushing against your face. Now that your body and mind are relaxed, let's step into tonight's story. But before we begin, remind yourself that you deserve these moments of relaxation, and let go of all worries as you listen to each word. And now, as you are fully relaxed, let's begin our journey into tonight's tale. Allow my words to guide you into a world of dreams and serenity. Relax and listen slowly. Ruby hurried along the wet pavement, her steps quick and determined, navigating through the crowd with a graceful agility that reflected years of city living. Above her, the sky was an endless sheet of gray, as the rain, steady and unrelenting, swept through the city like a torrent. She gripped her umbrella tightly, shielding herself from the dampness that threatened to creep in despite her best efforts. She wasn't in the mood for delays today, not with the weather weighing her down and the constant noise of the city pulling her thoughts in all directions. As she moved, the others around her walked with their heads lowered, each of them seemingly lost in their own thoughts, all focused on reaching their destinations. No one was interested in the beauty of the streets, the elegance of the buildings, or the feel of the cool breeze against their skin. It was as though the rain had pressed pause on the usual bustling energy that made the city so alive. Today, there was only one goal on everyone's mind: get to shelter. Ruby had been accustomed to the city's rhythm on more pleasant days. She had once found solace in the simplicity of wandering through the streets, enjoying the unique architecture, or stopping to take in the fresh air at a nearby park. But that feeling was absent today. The gloom from the sky matched by the hurry of everyone around her. Her thoughts meandered as she walked. April showers bring May flowers, she mused with a wry smile. But this rain, unlike the spring rains she remembered as a child, wasn't doing her any good. She wasn't expecting the flowers to bloom in the city's pavement cracks, after all. The mist from the rain began to sneak past her umbrella, and she could feel the ends of her carefully styled hair start to droop. It had taken her a significant amount of time that morning to replicate the voluminous curls of Ginger Rogers, and now, by midday, those curls would inevitably be replaced with the limp strands of a straight bob. Just my luck, she thought, stifling a sigh. At least she hadn't opted for her nicest shoes today. Thankfully, her practical lace-up Oxfords, sturdy and dependable, would hold up better than anything else in this weather. Even as she tried to avoid puddles, Ruby found herself looking down at the reflections in the water, the neon lights of the city shimmering brightly in the dull gray light. The rain had turned the streets into a series of small lakes, each reflecting the flicker of glowing lights in hues of blue, red, and yellow. It was as if the city had become a kaleidoscope of colors, softened and blurred by the gentle ripple of the water. She could hear the hum of cars rushing through the rain, tires splashing through puddles with a steady rhythm, and the soft murmur of voices from the hurried crowd as they passed by her. Despite the noise, Ruby felt detached from it all, as though she was floating just above the sidewalk, suspended in her thoughts. The rain, the city, the dampness, it all felt like a distant echo as her mind wandered to other things. Ruby had been walking for what felt like an eternity, each step bringing her closer to a place that she held dear, the Automat. It was more than just a meal stop. It was a haven in the chaos of the city, a place that promised warmth and comfort when the world outside felt cold and relentless. She had been anticipating this moment all morning, and now, as she finally approached the familiar two-story Art Deco building, a sense of relief washed over her. The Automat's building was as distinctive as it was welcoming. Its weathered exterior, worn from years of service but still regal in its own way, rose before her. Above the entrance, the name of the establishment was proudly displayed in mosaic tiles, small, colorful pieces that glinted under the artificial lights, offering a glimpse of the old-world charm of the place. On either side of the main entrance were revolving doors, constantly turning as people entered and exited with the efficiency of a well-oiled machine. Ruby pushed her way through one of the golden revolving doors, and as she stepped inside, she was greeted by the warm, polished interior. The Automat, with its high ceilings and gleaming lacquered tables, was a place where everyday people, like Ruby herself, could feel like royalty. The air was filled with the soft hum of conversation, the clink of coins, and the subtle rhythm of footsteps echoing off the floor. Inside, the Automat was a marvel of efficiency and order. Ruby, with just a few coins jingling in her purse, knew that she could pick out any dish she desired and enjoy it without breaking the bank. In fact, the amount she had, 2 dimes, was just enough to exchange for nickels at the glass booth by the door. The nickel throwers, women with rubber-tipped fingers, would take the larger coins and quickly dispense the smaller change, all while carrying on with their work without missing a beat. With her newly exchanged nickels in hand, Ruby walked to the food display wall, her excitement growing. This was the best part. The wall of small glass compartments, each containing a different food item. The windows were no larger than the palm of her hand, but behind each one, a feast awaited. There was something thrilling about choosing from the array of options, all clearly labeled with glowing signs. Each window contained a different dish, neatly displayed for the taking. A sign above each compartment told Ruby whether the window held a sandwich, pie, or hot meal. Some of the offerings were simple, like a tomato and lettuce sandwich, while others were heartier, such as a piping hot chicken pot pie or creamy macaroni and cheese. All of it, however, was priced to be affordable for the working class. Most meals cost 15 cents, with some dishes priced as low as 5 cents. It was a place where anyone, regardless of their status, could dine like a queen. Ruby loved this sense of equality that permeated the Automat. The people inside, though diverse in their occupations and social standing, shared a common bond. They were all there for the same reason: good food at a reasonable price. Whether they were well-dressed professionals or workers in rough clothes, everyone helped themselves. The food may have been humble, but the experience was one of luxury, from the gold accents that adorned the walls to the beautiful clock that hung high above the room. Every detail, from the shiny metal dispensers to the delicate hardware on the cabinets, had been chosen to make the space feel special. For Ruby, the Automat was more than just a place to eat. It was a place where she could escape the rigid class structures of the outside world. It was a sanctuary where social boundaries didn't matter, and she could sit shoulder to shoulder with anyone, be it a lawyer, a taxi driver, or a secretary like herself. In the Automat, everyone was equal. Ruby stepped up to the glass booth, ready to exchange her change for the small nickels that would allow her to purchase her lunch. The girl behind the counter barely glanced at Ruby as she expertly flipped the coins from one hand to the other, sliding them through the tiny opening with a practiced ease. It was a routine Ruby had seen countless times, yet it always amazed her how smoothly everything ran, like clockwork. The nickel thrower's fingers were fast, almost mechanical, as they shifted coins in a seamless motion, and within seconds, Ruby had her handful of shiny 5-cent pieces. With the small pile of nickels now in her hand, she grabbed a tray and made her way over to the rows of glass windows, each one offering a different type of food. She paused for a moment, eyes scanning the selection, savoring the anticipation of what she would choose. There was something wonderfully comforting about this part of the process. It was as if the Automat itself was an endless treasure trove of little surprises, and every window held the promise of something delicious and satisfying. Ruby moved from window to window, each little compartment filled with neatly arranged food, all within arm's reach. Some of the windows had cards attached, listing the items inside and indicating how many nickels she would need to insert. It was a simple system, yet it made her feel as though she were part of something much grander, like a small cog in a well-oiled machine. There was something elegant in the way the Automat worked, the efficiency of it, the speed with which people could help themselves. Her eyes landed on a compartment that contained a sandwich wrapped neatly in wax paper. She knew this would be the one. Her fingers slid the coins into the slot one by one, and she rotated the little knob next to the window. As the window clicked open, Ruby's excitement rose, and she reached inside to grab her sandwich. She closed the window with a satisfying snap and placed her wrapped lunch on her tray, the wax paper still warm from the food's recent preparation. Next, she headed to the beverage section, where the drinks were dispensed from a series of metal spouts. Ruby knew that the secret to getting the perfect cup of coffee was timing. It was essential to have the cup positioned just right when you turned the lever, or you'd risk overpouring, forcing you to spend another nickel for a second helping. She had learned this trick the hard way, having once missed her portion and had to pay again. Now, she was a pro, The coffee spouted from the dispenser into her cup with a satisfying gurgle, and she made her way to a nearby table. There were still plenty of empty spots, but Ruby, always a creature of habit, chose a small corner table by the window. She liked to sit there, where she could watch the rain pouring down outside while she enjoyed her meal. The rhythmic sound of raindrops against the glass was oddly soothing, and it made the Automat feel like a cocoon of warmth and comfort, safely tucked away from the storm outside. As she settled into her seat, Ruby couldn't help but smile to herself. She felt a sense of contentment, a quiet joy in the simplicity of the moment. Her lunch was warm, her coffee was strong, and the world outside was distant, almost irrelevant. She had the time to enjoy her meal, to savor each bite of her sandwich and sip of her coffee. The Automat wasn't just about the food, it was about the experience, the little luxuries that made life feel a bit easier. Across from her, a group of well-dressed women sat together, laughing quietly over their own meals. Nearby, a young man buried his nose in a newspaper, completely absorbed in the headlines of the day. There was a hum of activity in the room, but it was a gentle hum, filled with the sounds of contented chatter, the clinking of utensils against plates, and the soft shuffle of footsteps. The Automat was alive with the quiet energy of people finding solace in the simple act of eating together. Ruby's eyes wandered around the room, and she caught sight of a young couple in the corner. They were talking softly, exchanging smiles, and Ruby couldn't help but feel a small twinge of envy. She imagined what it would be like to have someone to share her lunch with, someone who might sit across from her, laughing over the smallest joke, enjoying the warmth of each other's company. But for now, she was content to sit alone, her thoughts her only companion. As Ruby sipped her coffee and savored the warmth spreading through her chest, she let her mind wander, her thoughts drifting like the rain outside. The Automat, with its strange magic, had a way of slowing time. In this corner of the city, far removed from the hurry and bustles of the outside world, everything felt calm, almost timeless. She could have spent hours here, watching the world pass by, lost in her own little universe. But she knew her break wouldn't last forever. Her gaze shifted across the room. Near the pie station, a grandmotherly woman had just taken the last slice of cherry pie, the very last one in the glass compartment. Ruby's eyes twinkled with anticipation. She knew what was coming next, the Automat's trademark efficiency. The metal drum inside the pie compartment slowly turned, and as if by magic, a fresh stack of pies appeared. It was a small, unremarkable action, but Ruby couldn't help but admire the seamless process. The Automat never stopped moving, never failed to provide for its patrons. It was in moments like this that Ruby marveled at the brilliance of the Automat. On the surface, it appeared entirely self-service, but there was always an invisible workforce behind the scenes. It was a well-choreographed dance of workers who, though unseen, kept everything running smoothly. From the nickel throwers to the pie stuffers, every worker played their part in ensuring that the customer's needs were met. Ruby was particularly fascinated by the behind-the-scenes magic. How did the workers manage to keep everything so well-stocked, so well-maintained? The Automat was an intricate system of coordination, with each part playing a crucial role in creating the illusion of a perfectly self-sufficient restaurant. No one could see the cooks or the cleaners, but they were there, working tirelessly in the shadows, ensuring that everything was just right. It was a quiet brilliance, the unseen hands that made the automat run like a dream. Her attention was drawn back to the two men sitting at the table next to hers. One of them had a newspaper tucked under his arm, and they were deep in conversation. Ruby couldn't help but overhear their discussion. The topic of the World's Fair had caught their interest. Ruby had heard a lot about the upcoming event. Everyone was talking about it. Rumors swirled about the exhibits, the new inventions, and the incredible feats of engineering that would be on display. The men were particularly intrigued by the time capsules that would be buried at the fair. The idea of sealing up items from the present to be opened in 5,000 years was fascinating to them. They debated what should go into the capsules. Some ideas seemed more valuable than others. Albert Einstein's writings seemed like an obvious choice, but one of the men scoffed at the inclusion of seemingly trivial items, like a men's safety racer and a Cupid doll. The debate continued, with each man presenting his case for why certain items should be included. Ruby found herself wondering what she would put into a time capsule. If she had the chance, what would she choose to represent her world, her life, her time? It was a thought-provoking exercise, one that made her think about the things she held dear, the small, everyday items that brought her comfort. In the end, she decided it wasn't something she could answer so easily. The future was an unknown, and what would matter 5,000 years from now was hard to predict. As the two men continued their discussion, Ruby's mind turned to something else. The television. One of the men had mentioned reading an article that claimed television would never surpass radio, as people simply wouldn't sit still to watch something. Ruby found herself shaking her head, silently disagreeing with the journalist's argument. For her, the idea of television was exciting. The World's Fair was going to be broadcast on TV, and she was eager to watch it, even if she couldn't be there in person. She imagined herself curled up in a cozy chair, watching the events unfold on screen. The magic of the fair captured in the glow of the television set. It seemed like the perfect way to experience something so far away. Ruby leaned back in her chair, taking one last sip of her coffee. The room was quieter now. The lunch rush was coming to an end, and the atmosphere had shifted from lively chatter to a more subdued, peaceful hum. People were finishing up their meals, gathering their belongings, and preparing to head back into the world outside. Ruby, too, knew her time at the Automat was coming to a close. Her sandwich was gone, and her coffee cup was empty. She had enjoyed her meal and her little escape from the dreary weather, but it was time to return to the bustle of the city. She neatly folded her empty wax paper into a small square and placed it on her tray. Then, with a sigh, she reached into her purse to retrieve her book. It was Rebecca, a novel she had been meaning to finish for weeks. Her friend Lorna had recommended it, and Ruby had promised herself she would finish it before the film adaptation with Laurence Olivier hit the theaters. Ruby had read a few chapters during her lunch breaks, but today she had managed to read a bit more, savoring the twists and turns of the plot. Still, she couldn't resist glancing up from time to time, her gaze drifting over the room, taking in the scene. There was the woman reading a magazine nearby. Glamour of Hollywood, the cover featuring an image of the actress Anne Sheridan. Ruby recognized her, having seen her in several films. She smiled to herself, secretly wishing she could indulge in a bit of luxury like that woman, flipping through the pages of a glossy magazine. But Ruby was content. For her, the little treats of life, like a lunch at the Automat or a few stolen minutes with a good book, were enough. Her eyes shifted to the lanky young man at the next table, who had stopped eating and was now sketching something in a notepad. His attention seemed focused on the pie display, his pencil moving rapidly as he drew the shapes of the compartments. Ruby was fascinated by the way his mind worked, capturing the Automat's little details on paper. It was a quiet moment of connection, as if they were both observing the same world, though in different ways. Ruby was still reflecting on the man's drawing when she noticed the two children she had overheard earlier, standing near the milk dispenser. Their lunch was finished, and now they were being ushered out of the Automat by their mother. As they passed, the boy, clutching his comic book, a well-worn copy of science fiction, followed obediently behind his mother. Ruby smiled softly at the sight, recalling how precious childhood belongings were. How a simple comic book could hold such value. She silently hoped he wouldn't get it wet as he ventured back into the rain-soaked streets. As the little family disappeared through the revolving door, a neatly dressed Automat employee appeared at their table. With swift efficiency, he cleared away their dishes, wiped down the table, and left it spotless. Ruby admired the seamless operation of the Automat once again. It was like watching an orchestra perform, everything happening without a hitch, an invisible team behind the scenes making sure every detail was taken care of. The customers, oblivious to the work happening behind the walls, could enjoy their meals in peace, thinking they were serving themselves. But Ruby knew better. She knew that the Automat's magic lay in the harmony of all its parts. Ruby glanced at the clock on the wall, realizing it was time for her to leave. The hour was late, and the rain showed no sign of letting up. She stood up slowly, gathering her tray and belongings. As she moved to place her tray on the clearing station, she couldn't help but feel a tinge of reluctance. The Automat had been a brief but perfect refuge from the damp, cold city. She had felt at peace here, surrounded by the quiet hum of the place and the simple comfort of a meal. It was a sanctuary, a reminder that amidst the chaos of life, there were still small moments of tranquility to be found. With her umbrella in hand, Ruby stepped toward the golden revolving door, the warmth from inside rushing out as she pushed her way through. As she exited, she caught the eye of an older man in a sharp pinstripe suit, who smiled at her and tipped his hat. It was such a small, polite gesture, but it left Ruby feeling unexpectedly pleased. It was moments like these, small acts of kindness, that made the world feel a little less indifferent. The rain greeted her as she stepped back into the city, but this time, it didn't seem quite as oppressive. Ruby held her umbrella high, her steps lighter, her spirits lifted. She felt a strange sense of connection to the world around her, as though the Automat had woven a thread through her day, bringing a sense of peace and comfort that she could carry with her as she walked through the streets. As Ruby joined the flow of pedestrians, each of them with their own destination in mind, she felt as though she were part of something larger. A river of people moving through the city, each with their own story. And As she navigated around puddles and dodged the rushing crowd, she felt a deep sense of gratitude for the small, simple joys of life. The warmth of a good meal, the comfort of a familiar place, and the unexpected kindness of strangers. It was enough to make her smile, to make her feel that everything, even on a rainy day, was just a little bit better.